I remember the day like it was yesterday, a cold, bitter morning in early January, the kind that makes your breath hang in the air like a ghost. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the divorce papers sprawled across the table, the ink still fresh, still bleeding. My wife, no, my ex-wife now, had left me with nothing but a hollowed-out house and a heart full of questions. I'm Mark, 42 years old, a software developer who had once built a life that seemed solid. We had a modest home, a dog named Cooper, and a carefully curated set of routines. Coffee at 6, gym at 7, coding by 9. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, or so I thought. Now, everything felt like a lie. We'd been married for 12 years, and for most of them, I thought we were happy. But somewhere along the line, the trust we built started to crack like old paint on a forgotten wall. I didn't see it then, too busy with work, too sure of us. My wife, Laura, was beautiful and smart, an accountant with a smile that could light up any room. I thought she was my partner for life. I found out differently when she served me those papers. There were no warnings, no late-night arguments that hinted at a storm brewing. One day she just stopped being my wife and started being my enemy. She took everything. The house, the car, even the paintings her mother had given us for our anniversary. I stood there, the echoes of her departure bouncing off the empty walls, wondering how love could turn so cold so fast. But she didn't know about the Bitcoin wallet. That was mine alone. My quiet act of rebellion against a world that felt increasingly out of my control. A digital fortress built over years, one coin at a time, a lifeline I kept hidden, even from her. It was the one thing she hadn't taken, the one thing that made me feel like I still had some piece of myself left. As I looked around the house, memories clinging to every corner like dust, I felt a rage simmering just beneath my skin. How could she take it all so easily? The memories of lazy Sunday mornings, the quiet moments of laughter over cheap red wine, gone. I felt like a fool for trusting so blindly. I told myself I wouldn't let her win. She could have the furniture, the dishes, even the damn dog, but she wouldn't take my future. My Bitcoin wallet was my secret weapon, my last stand. In that moment, I wasn't just a man picking up the pieces. I was a man planning his comeback. And as I sat down at my computer, the glow of the monitor lighting up my face, I felt the first flicker of determination. She might have taken everything else, but she hadn't taken my hope. Not yet. The days that followed were a blur of empty rooms and hollow memories. Everywhere I looked, there were shadows of the life Laura and I had built together, now fractured and fading. The house, stripped of its warmth, seemed to echo with her absence. I spent hours wandering from room to room, tracing the ghostly outlines of the furniture she had claimed as hers. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every missed cue that might have hinted at her betrayal. I thought about the nights she said she had to work late, the weekends she spent visiting her sister, and the quiet way she started pulling away. It all seemed so obvious in hindsight, but back then, I was too busy with deadlines and debugging code to see the truth unraveling. The guilt was as heavy as the betrayal. I'd loved her with everything I had. I'd trusted her completely. And now, that trust was shattered. I felt like a fool, an idiot who'd been too blind to see the cracks forming under his feet. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce decree, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. She'd taken the house. She'd taken Cooper. She'd taken every damn thing that made this place feel like home. But in the middle of my fury, there was a small ember of suspicion that wouldn't die. It started with a phone call. I'd just sat down with a glass of whiskey when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitant, I picked up. Hello? There was a pause, then a man's voice. Mark, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Laura. My breath caught. Who is this? Let's just say I'm someone who knows her, well, I don't want to get into the details now, but I think you deserve to know what she's been up to. Before I could ask more, the line went dead. I stared at my phone, the silence in the room pressing down on me like a weight. Who was he? And what did he know? I tried to brush it off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. My mind kept circling back to that call, to the hint of something more beneath the surface of her betrayal. Had there been someone else? Another man? Another secret? The next day I started digging. I opened her old email accounts, ones she'd forgotten to log out of on my laptop, and read through years of messages. Most were mundane, work-related, but every now and then I'd catch a thread of something that didn't feel right. Dinner reservations she never mentioned, credit card charges for hotel rooms in cities she'd never said she visited. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe she'd gone with friends or colleagues. But late at night, when the whiskey had dulled the edges of my pain, I let the doubts flood in. I thought about the way she'd grown distant, how her laugh had felt forced those last few months, how she never looked me in the eye anymore. I was spiraling. Each new piece of evidence was a punch to the gut, but I couldn't stop. It was like a puzzle I needed to solve, even if the picture it formed would break me. One afternoon, I found an old text on her phone. She hadn't bothered to delete it. It was from a number I didn't recognize, and it read, "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again." My hands shook as I read it over and over. My stomach churned, a sick mix of anger and heartbreak. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started to feel like I was living with a ghost, like every room in this house was haunted by the version of her I never knew. I wanted answers, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear them, and through it all, there was that voice in the back of my mind, reminding me of the one thing she hadn't taken, my Bitcoin wallet, my last secret. It felt like my only anchor, the one thing that still belonged to me. Every night, I sat down at my computer, watching the price of Bitcoin tick up and down, the numbers a cold comfort. It was a lifeline I clung to, a reminder that I still had some measure of control in a life that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But even as I told myself that, I knew it was only a matter of time before I uncovered the full truth. The question was, could I handle it? I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was still buried deeper. The cryptic phone call, the text messages. It was all adding up. But I needed more. I needed proof that would strip away any doubt, that would turn my suspicion into certainty. So I started to dig. At first it felt like an invasion, like I was prying into the secrets of a woman I'd once sworn to love and protect. But that feeling faded quickly, replaced by a cold, focused determination. She had already crossed every line. What was left for me to respect? I spent my nights combing through bank statements, following the digital trail of her betrayal. At first it was subtle, small, unexplained withdrawals, charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel stays in places she'd never told me she was visiting. But as I went further back, the pieces started to form a clearer picture. A picture of a life I hadn't been a part of. One night, I cracked into her cloud storage. My hands were sweating as I clicked through folders marked work and taxes, each one a potential landmine. But then I found a folder buried beneath layers of innocuous files. It was called Memories. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Smiling selfies of her with a man I didn't recognize, candlelit dinners, weekend getaways. A life she'd lived while I sat at home, too wrapped up in deadlines and code to see her slipping away. I felt the betrayal like a physical blow, each image a punch to the gut. My mind reeled. Who was he? When had it started? But even as my heart broke, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about reclaiming what she'd tried to steal, my dignity, my future. I saved every photo, every message, every scrap of evidence. I created a folder on my own laptop, labeled simply, Truth. It felt like an act of war, like I was gathering ammunition for a battle I hadn't asked for, but was now determined to win. In the days that followed, I kept up the charade of normalcy. At work, I smiled and nodded. In meetings, even as my mind buzzed with plans. At home, I kept the house as she'd left it. Every picture frame and empty space a testament to what she'd taken from me. But underneath, I was plotting. I reached out to an old friend of mine, David, a lawyer I'd met in college, someone I trusted to keep my secrets. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I called him and explained what I'd found, his tone turned serious. "You've got solid evidence, Mark," he said. "You need to be careful, though. Don't let her know you're on to her until you're ready." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I know. I'm not going to let her see me coming." David helped me draft a plan, a way to protect myself legally and financially. I moved what money I could into a separate account, one she didn't know about. I set up alerts on my credit cards, checked my credit report for anything suspicious. I became obsessed with the details, combing through every transaction like a detective piecing together a crime. At night, I sat alone in the glow of my computer. The images of her betrayal burned into my mind. But there was something else there too. A flicker of steel in my spine, a spark of something that felt dangerously close to hope. I wasn't the man she thought she could walk all over. I wasn't going to let her take everything from me. The Bitcoin wallet was my secret ace, a nest egg that she didn't even know existed. It was the one thing she couldn't touch, and I clung to it like a lifeline. Sometimes I'd open the wallet just to look at the numbers, to remind myself that I still had a future. The price of Bitcoin was volatile, but to me, it was more than money. It was proof that I still had something that was mine alone. The emotional toll was heavy. Some nights, the weight of it all pressed down so hard I could barely breathe. I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, my mind looping through the same questions. How could she do this? What did I do to deserve it? But each time, I pulled myself back with the same thought. I wouldn't let her break me. I started to keep a journal too, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. Late at night, I'd pour my thoughts onto the page, the ink and outlet for everything I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about my anger, my fear, my need to reclaim something for myself. And slowly, as the days turned into weeks, I felt that need turn into something more, a plan, a purpose. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was becoming something else, someone stronger, someone smarter. I was done waiting for the answers to come to me. I was going to find them, and when I did, I'd be ready. Because Laura had taken almost everything, but she hadn't taken my will to fight back, and she hadn't taken my future. It was a gray, overcast afternoon when I finally decided I couldn't wait any longer. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, building my case in silence, but the time had come to confront Laura and end the charade once and for all. My heart was hammering in my chest as I drove to the downtown cafe where we'd agreed to meet. Our first meeting since the divorce had been finalized. I walked in, and there she was, sitting at a corner table, her hair done just so, her face calm and collected. She looked up and gave me a smile that once would have melted me. Now it felt like ice. I sat down across from her, the air between us crackling with unspoken words. "Mark," she said lightly as if nothing had happened. "You look, well." I studied her face for a moment, letting the silence stretch. "Cut the bullshit, Laura. We both know why we're here." Her smile faltered just for a second, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop, flipping it open so she could see the folder labeled Truth. I clicked it open, one by one, showing her the pictures, the text messages, the bank statements. Her eyes widened, her carefully crafted mask slipping as the weight of her secret spilled onto the screen. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. "It's everything you've been hiding from me," I said, my voice low and steady. "I know about him, Laura. I know about the trips, the money you took, the lies you fed me while I was too busy to see what was happening." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "Don't bother denying it. I have all the proof I need." For a moment, there was only silence between us. Then she leaned back, her eyes narrowing. "So what? You want to ruin me? Is that what this is about?" I shook my head. "No. I want you to understand exactly what you did to me. I want you to see that you can't just walk away from this like nothing happened." She scoffed, but her voice wavered. "You think you're some kind of hero now? That you can just shame me into... what? Giving it all back?" I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, Laura. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to know that I see you for who you really are, and I want you to know that you didn't break me." Her lips parted in shock, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She started to speak, but I wasn't done. "You thought you could take everything, my house, my life, my trust, and walk away without consequences," I said. "But you forgot one thing. My Bitcoin wallet. You didn't even know it existed, did you?" She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "What?" I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. "I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, Laura. While you were busy spending my money on your secret weekends, I was investing in something you couldn't touch, something that's now worth more than you could ever imagine. For a moment, she looked like she'd been slapped. Her lips moved soundlessly. Before she managed to whisper, You kept it from me?" "Of course I did," I said coldly. "It's mine. And no matter what you took, no matter how hard you tried to tear me down, you'll never get your hands on it." She looked away, her shoulders sagging under the weight of her own choices. I didn't think it would matter." "It mattered to me," I said. "And now it's the reason I can walk away from all of this with my head held high." I closed the laptop and stood up, my pulse thrumming in my ears. She looked up at me, her face pale and drawn. "So, what happens now?" she asked quietly. I took a breath, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. Now I move on. I start over, without you." She looked like she wanted to say something more, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the cafe, the cold air outside feeling like a baptism. Each step felt like a declaration, of freedom, of resilience, of the fact that she hadn't taken everything after all. As I walked to my car, the sky cracked open above me, a cold rain starting to fall. But I didn't care. I welcomed it, letting it wash away the last of the pain, the last of the man I'd been when I still believed her lies. Because she might have taken almost everything, but she hadn't taken me, and she sure as hell hadn't taken my future. I drove home in the rain, the city lights blurring through the windshield. My mind was clear, my heart lighter than it had been in months. I was done with her, done with the lies. And in that moment, I knew that whatever came next, whatever the world threw at me, I was ready. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and brutal. Word of Laura's betrayal spread faster than I could have imagined. Friends who had once looked at us like the perfect couple now saw her for what she was. A woman who'd been living a double life, playing both sides until she got caught. The evidence I'd gathered spoke louder than any argument we'd ever had. She tried to deny it at first, spinning half-truths and crocodile tears, but the weight of the photos, the messages, and the bank records crushed every lie she tried to tell. The man she'd been seeing, he cut ties with her the moment the truth came out, not wanting to be dragged down by the scandal she'd created. I didn't take any legal action to ruin her further. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. Her reputation took the hit it deserved, and for the first time since she'd walked out on me, I felt like I was breathing real air again. I didn't care about the whispers behind her back or the looks she got when she walked down the street. That was her burden to carry, not mine. Still, there were moments when the weight of it all caught up with me. Late at night, I'd find myself lying in bed, the silence of the house pressing down on me like a phantom limb. I'd think about the years we'd spent together, the plans we'd made, and how quickly it had all turned to dust. There was a sadness there, a dull ache that didn't go away overnight. But alongside the sadness, there was relief. A relief so deep it felt like I could finally fill my lungs again. She hadn't broken me. She hadn't taken everything. My Bitcoin wallet, untouched and secure, was a symbol of my future. A future she had no claim to. It was a small victory, maybe, but it was mine. I started to see myself differently in those quiet moments. No longer the man who'd been left behind, no longer the fool who hadn't seen the truth. I was a man who'd faced his worst nightmare and come out the other side stronger. A man who'd learned that betrayal doesn't have to define you, that sometimes it's the thing that sets you free. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be days when the past crept back in, when the hurt flared up like an old wound. But I also knew that I was done being a victim. Done letting her choices weigh me down. As I looked at the numbers in my Bitcoin wallet, growing steadily with each passing week, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that I could rebuild. Hope that I could start again. And hope that, in the end, I would be okay. Because she might have taken almost everything. But she hadn't taken me. And she never would. Months passed, and with them came a quiet, steady sense of healing. The house that had once felt like a graveyard for old memories became a space I could finally breathe in. I replaced the furniture she'd taken with pieces that felt like me, warm, solid, and mine. The walls that had once echoed with her laughter were now filled with my own thoughts, my own music, my own sense of calm. I found a rhythm in my days that had nothing to do with her. Mornings started with long runs, the cold air filling my lungs, and reminding me that I was still alive, still moving forward. I poured my focus into work, taking on new projects and losing myself in the logic of code, something that had always felt safe and predictable in a way love never had. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I'd neglected during the chaos of the marriage, and found comfort in their laughter, their loyalty. And then there was the Bitcoin wallet, my small fortress of independence. It grew steadily, each uptick in value, a silent promise that the future could be brighter than the past. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the freedom it represented, the reminder that I'd found a way to protect a piece of myself when everything else was being taken away. One night, I sat out on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars blink in the clear sky above. Cooper had come back to me too, a quiet arrangement with Laura that somehow felt like a final olive branch. He lay at my feet, his steady breathing a comforting presence. I scratched behind his ears, and he looked up at me with those soft, trusting eyes. In that moment, I realized how far I'd come. I wasn't the same man who'd watched his life fall apart at a kitchen table littered with divorce papers. I was stronger now, wiser. I'd learned that trust, once broken, can never be the same, but that didn't mean I couldn't trust myself. I'd learned that love can fade, but self-respect is something worth fighting for. I thought about Laura sometimes, about how quickly she'd become a stranger to me. There was no more anger, no more bitterness, just a quiet sadness for what we'd lost and a sense of gratitude for what I'd gained. She had shown me what betrayal looked like, but in doing so, she'd also shown me what resilience felt like. And for that, in some strange way, I was thankful. As I sat there in the cool night air, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. My heart was still tender in places, but it beat steady and sure. The future stretched out before me. Unknown, yes, but mine to claim. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled. Tomorrow was waiting, and I was ready to meet it head on. Because in the end, it wasn't about what she'd taken from me. It was about what I'd learned to protect, my hope, my dignity, my sense of self. She'd tried to take everything, but she hadn't taken me. And in that simple, stubborn fact, I found my freedom. Looking back on everything, I realize now that what she took was never really mine to keep. The house, the car, the things we shared, they were just temporary, fleeting pieces of a life that had already begun to drift apart. But what she couldn't take, what no one can take, was the quiet strength I found in the aftermath. There's a certain power in surviving betrayal. It strips you down to your bones, forces you to see what truly matters and what was just a fragile illusion. In the hollow spaces where trust once lived, I found something unexpected: resilience. The kind of resilience that doesn't come from avoiding the pain, but from facing it head on and refusing to let it define you. I used to think that love was the only thing that mattered, but I've learned that loyalty to yourself, to your own worth, your own dreams, is what truly endures. It's what carries you through the storm when the people you thought would stand by you are the ones who let go. The truth is, life will always have its cracks and fractures. People will disappoint you, promises will be broken. But if you can hold on to that small, stubborn spark of hope, if you can remember who you are even when everything else falls away, then nothing and no one can ever truly take your future from you. As I sit here tonight, I feel that spark burning brighter than it ever has. I know now that I'm stronger than the betrayal that tried to break me, and I know that no matter what happens next, I will face it with open eyes and an open heart, because in the end, the real lesson is this: the things that matter most can never be stolen, and the only thing that truly belongs to any of us is the fire we carry inside. So, if you're listening, if you're standing on the edge of your own heartbreak, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, remember this: you are more than what's been taken from you. And sometimes, the greatest act of strength is simply refusing to let the darkness define you. That's the truth I found in the aftermath. And it's the truth I carry forward, one unshakable step at a time.